Hey everyone, Ali here from HR for Health. I am super excited to be putting together this three-part series with my really good friend Greg Essenmacher, who I will introduce in a quick second. We're excited to do this three-part series because it's something that we're going to focus on, I think, throughout this year, which is to bring real life examples of situations that are partners, our friends have experienced with doctors around the country. And we think that by bringing these stories to you, stories that have real detail in them, that have the real experiences of doctors, and they're not theoretical things, but real things that have happened to our friends and our colleagues, that you will take away bits of information from this to hopefully avoid these same problems in your practices. And so this one's going to be a three-part series, and this first one we're going to do is going to really be talking about the payroll companies and the power grab that comes with that, and what they're doing to try to take you know work with doctors, and some of the things they're saying that may or may not be necessarily totally accurate. So anyways, let me start by introducing Greg. So, Greg is a leading expert in education when it comes to fixed full arch dentistry. He has helped transform implant practices into full arch powerhouses and has attended almost all of our DSO and dental conferences. And so he's an expert in every sense of the definition. He founded GNA Consulting. He's been focused for over a decade. I think, Greg, I feel like it feels like you've been doing it for like 30 years as opposed to just a
Well, it's
decade.
18 in dental, but it's over a decade just in the teeth in a day fixed full arch. So thank you for
Okay,
that.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. So, and you've been focusing on the fixed full arch market, which is huge, but you're providing tailored solutions and cross-functional collaborations. He helps clients, a lot of our clients, and a lot of groups around the country with his expertise, which includes optimizing patient acquisition costs and lowering those. Coaching for lead calls, so how to get your team to speak appropriately to patients and how to get them to actually make an appointment, which I think is huge. And then, of course, the treatment case presentations and increasing acceptance. So his insights are unbelievable. You'll have actionable steps by the time we're done today. But more importantly, you'll hear stories of HR issues with his clients, and that's one of the reasons why we have him on. So welcome, Greg.
Thanks so much. And that's the thing with what we do in the fixed full arch space. The vast majority of our clients are doing both and, right? Full arch is a part of the auxiliary services that they provide to their client base, their patient base. They're doing a lot of other dentistry and they're adding to. Sure, we have a few of the full arch centers, if you will. But when you're doing comprehensive dentistry, you really need a partner to look at comprehensively everything you're doing in the practice. And that's going to be really what we're focusing on here today, and why HR for Health is such a great partner of ours at GNA Consult, because you can't pull one lever and it's not just on the coaching and training to be able to convert more cases. It really is a 360 view of the practice and how it can influence and impact that entire practice and revenue and all the things. So thanks so much for having me on, and I'm excited to have the conversation today with you exactly about this particular case study that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, absolutely. And Greg, this case study was the first one that we talked about that really, I think, launched us into doing this three-part series. And so let me set the table a little bit, but I want you to give a ton of detail about how you came to get this information from the client, what happened, and then we'll just kind of talk a little bit through it. But from what I remember, you were working with this large group. They have, I think, about 35 or so employees, and they had put someone in charge of payroll. Isn't that right?
Well, yeah, and let me back it up a little bit, because this is a group, right? So they have a GP practice, and then they also have a full arch center. So on the full arch center side, like when I first started working with them, this is years ago. Started working with them, they have the employee manual, right? They have the things in place that they believe, like, yeah, we have all these things. We're doing all the things right, if you will. And then things start to really get exposed down the line because, again, we're not an HR company, right? We do the teach, coach, and train side, and then we also help with the operations side. But some of the things that started to come out as things went along were rather shocking. And that's what I really want to talk about today, because it really has to do with the payroll company they were using that said, yeah, we've got everything covered, nothing to see here, move on type of situation, until it wasn't, because they were really looking to bring in, they were growing to a point where they needed to bring somebody in, maybe not at the C-suite, but they needed to bring someone in at the director level that had skill at growing and scaling, because they
Mhm.
were looking to start to add more locations. And you know full well, when you start to add more locations, the level of complexity increases, and bringing in somebody who has skill in that area is so critically important.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, as businesses grow and offices multiply, what happens with the owner doctors? They start to pay less and less attention to some of these items, right? They're not sitting in termination meetings or performance review meetings and things of that nature. So they allocate some of those tasks to other employees. But that doesn't always go so well. And so tell us a little bit about what you heard happen here.
Yeah, so for sure. And one of the big pieces that we help with really is that team development, right? And growth aspect. So we put together a strategy. It was a long-term strategy for that growth with them, with this partner. And as such, it was a need for a level like a director of operations position. We put
Mhm.
that together, and then we knew we needed to go outside of the traditional, put an ad up on Indeed, right? You can't really do that. So we actually went to an industry partner that everybody really knows and said, here's the parameters of what we're looking for. Here's the skill set we're looking for. Can you help us? And you make that investment, right? So the investment's made to go on a search and look for an individual who has the certain parameters of skill set. Well, that's all well and good, but along the way, when you do bring somebody in, the owner founder really needs to make sure that they're in alignment with us as a partner and make some really good decisions. And that didn't necessarily happen because some fissures within like the organization and operations happen. If there's going to be transparency, it needs to be with teams that they're working with. At this point, we'd been working with this client for pretty close to a year and a half. So
Mm.
we knew all the underbelly at this point, right? P&L statements and all the things on the operation side, so we thought, right? And
Yeah.
certainly on the coaching and training, because we had literally tripled their business in revenue and profitability. So we saw quite a bit and helped change a lot of their compensation programs and things of that nature. So all seemed well and good on that side. And then things weren't so good once we started to see some exposure, once that individual was brought in, and once we had some issues of concern down the road happen. And we can certainly get into that. If you want me to just rip the band-aid off, we can talk about
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean, let's do that. I mean, the one thing I want to ask though, before we really jump into it, is this:
Yeah.
what signs, if any, were you seeing from your position um, about this person? Like, were there things that you heard, saw that just kind of raised some red flags for you?
One of the things from the candidate themselves is there was an overabundance of being eager to take the position and lack of really good questions of asking about the position and
Mhm.
details of, right? If somebody's going to relocate into a new geography,
Right.
I don't know about y'all, but I've been around for a little while. And usually the questions of like uprooting their life into another part of the country would involve some pretty detail of who do I report to? What does the reporting structure look like? And let me come for a day of visit. Let me see the staff. Let me see the team. I mean, this is a pretty important position. What does the growth structure look like? Can I see all the things?
You're
None
right.
of that was happening. And then the owner founder really wasn't that interested in being involved in the process, other than about a 30-minute meeting,
Yeah.
Zoom, with myself and with the candidate, and like, fine. Yeah, let's just go ahead.
Yeah.
All of those things seemed a little suspect to me. But again, I was charged with helping to build and grow. We did the due diligence with the recruiting firm that took care of vetting this particular candidate. And so things were move ahead as planned. And then things didn't go so well as planned moving
Yeah.
forward from there.
Yeah.
One
And
of the things that, yeah, please go ahead.
Greg, let me interject something I think for the audience, because this is something that we talk a lot about. Any one of those things that you just mentioned by themselves probably isn't such a big deal, right? There's a lot of dental practice owners and others who are just too busy to sit down with interviews or this thing or that thing, right? I mean, that in of itself, maybe not a big deal. A hire who maybe is so excited about the position that they're not wanting to, get in and ask a lot of questions, maybe by itself isn't as big of a deal. But when you start to see all these red flags, your alarms have to go up, right? Because sometimes it just points to different issues. And I think that's what you're saying. And I think from an HR perspective, we see this all the time as well, right? Where one behavior by itself may not be a big deal, but when you start to see that behavior plus some other things, then you go, well, this isn't normal, and then that sometimes raises, like, I mean, it should raise a red flag, but sometimes can lead to serious problems, which you're going to go into in a second. So yeah, I think that's a really good, important point.
And now let me tease out the little infomercial part of, but wait, there's more. So
Okay.
when we first started working with this client, and this would have been about a year prior, one of the biggest things that we do with clients right away is talk about, let's look at your employee manual. Let's look at your employee handbook and let's go through it. One of the biggest complications we had was getting that information and being able to update that information. Well,
Right.
one of the biggest challenges is because it came from their payroll company. And their payroll company is the one that gave the employee manual, and getting it updated was super challenging. It
Right.
wasn't easily accessible. It didn't feel like it was customizable as much as it should be for
Yeah.
a practice that's growing, a second practice, right? Because it was a two location, a GP practice and a surgical center. And so that was kind of one of those, I'm a little concerned about this, but okay, we'll move forward. They didn't want to like move things around and shake things around too much. Perfectly fine. After the individual was made an offer, right, with an offer letter, practice owner reaches out to me about a week before their start date and says to me in a text message, and I'm paraphrasing, do you think it's an issue if I co-sign for an apartment for this particular
Oh
person?
no. Oh no. Oh my gosh. Oh no. Oh, oh
Now,
no.
I,
Oh no. I
I
know
just
where
have
this
to
is
tell
going.
you,
Oh,
if you're asking the question, you probably know the answer.
yeah. 100%.
Why exactly would somebody need to have I'm just going to leave that as I'll let your listening audience fill in the blanks there. Now, again, to leverage on your point, any one of these particular things, maybe not a red flag, maybe just a cautionary yellow flag, but
Yeah.
all of these things together from both sides now are starting to concern me. We put together the offer letter, right? The offer letter has ambiguous pieces in it, right? Not intentionally, but something like bonus structure based on performance to be determined after 90 days. One of the reasons why is we wanted to see growth structure, what do you bring to the table? And the owner wanted to get to right away, not necessarily the right person.
Hmm.
Again, a rush to decision, we need somebody in place, the wheels are falling off operations wise, not necessarily the wisest decision to make. Okay, well enough. Not a lot of things like happening like to be able to get things in place. No problem. Let's fast forward. Individual comes into play, individual starts, not a whole lot of communication about like the workings of the first few weeks the person's in place. I make
Hmm.
sure that I'm there for the onboarding of this individual and the introduction. Seems to be going from what I can see, right? We're in office once a month, and then there's virtual trainings that our team does. We're thinking
Right.
everything's okay. Getting a text message here and there, but not a whole lot. Doing our due diligence with strategy meetings with this individual, the director of operations, on a weekly basis. Seems like they're engaged. 3.5 weeks in, get a phone call, things aren't going so great, right? There seems to be some abrasiveness. No worries, I'll be there next week. This is at the 4.5, 5 week mark.
Hmm.
I arrive in clinic. The owner takes me outside and says, you got to let this individual go. I say to the owner, what's exactly going on?
Yeah.
What has been happening that I haven't even been informed of what's going on? Be
Right.
that as it may, Ali, no documentation of what I would just call in general like bad behavior, right? Behavior that is kind of outlandish. I spend the next 48 hours, and usually it's just a day, right? Once a month with
Sure.
clients, 48 hours going through all of the things, meeting with different individuals in the clinic, documenting and asking people to document, which never had happened, some pretty egregious things that
Right.
are violations.
Sure.
As we're trying to transition this person out very quickly because it needs to happen, finding
Right.
out things happening like the owner gave this particular director of operations sole access to the payroll system. Sole access. Not even the bookkeeper had access to the payroll system. Sole
Wow.
access. So
Wow.
having to call and find out and maneuver and finding out a whole list of violations that had happened, like giving themselves a bonus that was not earned. And I mean, just the list goes on and on and on.
And, and
This
this
is why
goes,
having an HR partner who
yeah.
can help.
Well,
This is what
hundred
we dealt with.
percent. But I think, Greg, I think a big part of this is, and I think you'll agree with me when I say that the reason this happens, and you're not making any judgments about this person, but the reason
No.
why this happens is because dentists, as a community, are just extremely kind, trusting people. And as a result of that, right, they do things like this, right? Which in any other world, if you took a step back, if they were like advising a friend, they would probably tell their friend, hey, don't ever give this new hire access to payroll and access to all this stuff without any oversight. Make sure that you have, don't sign an apartment lease for this person, don't do these things, because when you step back from your own practice, it's a lot easier to see what's happening and be able to advise on it. But I think, to your point, one of the reasons why, and thank God he had you, by the way, to kind of advise him through some of this stuff. But one of the reasons we developed HR for Health was to make sure that the software wasn't person, wasn't reliant on one person. In other words, if somebody quit or somebody left or whatever, the next person coming in can just step in and start using the software. There's total accountability. And finally, the doctor is the one that makes the final decisions on everything in our system. And so, to protect against this kind of stuff, the way you're describing it. So what happened next? Tell me about what happened next.
Yeah, the next is really like the challenging part, which is the fallout and then uncovering, discovering, and trying to discard all of the
Oh,
right, the damage that was
yeah,
done. And it was first the short term, right? Rectifying with the payroll system of who and what, finding out the short term pieces of what was actually paid out, shouldn't have been paid out, how to offboard this individual, right? In a way that made sense, I guess would be not, and now we're just talking like the financial and the administrative pieces, not even to mention, right, the human capital pieces
right,
of
right,
what had
exactly.
happened and the damage that had been done in the clinic. And that's what we spent a lot of time on at G&A Consult with the team members. What was the fallout? What was the feeling? What was the sense? Who did we lose? Because of that process, short term and long term, and the trust value in all of those things. That was the short term pieces that had to be rectified. And then the financial piece with then going to the apartment complex and what would it be, because the individual wasn't going to come back and basically had abandoned the unit. And then because, the owner was a co-signer on it, what is it going to cost? Write the check of how much was it going to cost, to all of those things.
Right.
Those were the what I would call the short term pieces, right? The long term on the people side as well, but the short term administrative financial. And then the kicker was, it was about 3.5 or 4 months later when some of the changes had happened, right, with financial structure and getting in a better position with another company who actually was looking at the finances and accountants and bookkeepers, to find out that there was a tremendous amount of fraud that was going on in that very short period of time by the individual. So
Oh,
all of
man.
these pieces are really what the damage that can happen if on the front end, if you
Right.
don't have a partner that really understands the complexity in the dental space, and you have a payroll company, right? That doesn't really understand the complexities. And this is a very, very large payroll company. It's not
Yeah.
that this was just some mom and pop organization out of their garage working, a very
Sure.
large payroll company. And it's just
Right.
they handle tons of industries, dozens and dozens of industries. So it's not very specific to the nature, size, growth, need based of the dental industry. And that's why a partner like HR for Health, and it's not to be a sales promotion for y'all, but why at G&A Consult we needed to have a partner like HR for Health, because it's not our specialty. Just like in clinics, and they're all medical clinics of the mouth, and it's what I call it, Ali. So forgive any
Yeah.
of your listening audience or any of your clients, customers, anyone that's listening that gets offended by that. But the truth of the fact of the matter is being able to specialize in, just like for us, you specialize in converting those lead calls to consultations and having them show up. You specialize in converting those patients into starts, and just like specializing in the surgical aspect of the full arch, because it's not like a single implant, and you have different specializations within, right? And I'm not talking specialty like oral surgeon periodontist, but specializing in what you do is so critically important. And having the right partners that you can know and trust, that you can lean on, that at any one point, because the offboarding process was also very choppy for someone like us who's partnering with and trying to protect our clients, because I don't know, they've got things going on, like they're still doing production that day, and in the evenings they have all of their obligations plus their family plus, and all they're looking at is how much did that just cost me, not only in the financial capital but
Right.
also trying to spend time in the human capital in the practice, trying to salvage of their 35, 36 employees the most critical, but all of them, to make sure the next day that the employees actually show up
Yeah.
and seeing
Yeah.
what damage had occurred there. And that's what's critically important, that I think really as a reminder of why picking the right partners as you're in business is so critically important.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. No, I'm with you 100%, and that was a really great summary. But it's also one of the things that I think why so many dentists love working with you, Greg, is the fact that it's not just about the how, but it's with
Sales,
you.
right?
It's
Yeah.
also yeah. I mean, you're working so frequently with the team to make sure that that is happening, and that functional collaboration between the team and the patient and the doctor, all of that needs to be really hand in hand. And if you have one you know, poisonous fruit, I mean, it can absolutely destroy the entire tree. And that's that's the whole point of this example, right? It's the whole point of this example. You've got a bad actor in this employee. We know that, and those will happen. But I think some bad decisions occurred, before you could be involved or before you were really advised of what was going on, right? Because you would have advised them differently. And then thirdly, when it all comes time to it, finding out after your engagement is over that there may have been even stealing and other things happening financially and otherwise by this employee. I mean, that just is the final sort of you know I don't know even
The
what you can
straw that
call it,
breaks the
but the
camel's
final
back,
stab in
right?
the heart. It's like the final
Yeah.
stab in the heart, and it's just really, really disruptive to the whole practice. But the psychology of this poor doctor, and I don't know, maybe you can touch on this as we end on this part, but I can only imagine how the doctor's psychology has been impacted by this whole thing, right? He's
Yeah.
got your training, he's got your coaching, he's about to, kill it financially and otherwise, be able to provide some serious benefit to patients. But then he's got this concern now with employees, and maybe there's some trust issues there. And so I mean, what are some lessons do you think he learned from this that he took away, as this whole relationship with this employee ended? Like, what do you think he walked away with?
Yeah, and you hit on the word right there that was playing in my mind as you were sharing, and that's the word trust, right? Finding the trusted partners is so critically important
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it is a matter of trust within a practice for an owner finding the right partners to trust with, especially in the fixed full arch lane, right? As you're doing full arch, it's trusting the right marketing partners that they're providing good leads. It's trusting the right employees to be able to handle those leads and bring them in. It's trusting them because in full arch, it's not so much the what. It's not so much the product. You have to deliver a good product, don't get me wrong, but
of
it's the
course.
why. Patients move forward because of the motivation. And what that entails is making that emotional connection with the patient. And it's expressing the empathy. And that is essential to have a whole collaboration of trust throughout. And so that's internal with the team and being able to trust each other, just like they do in surgery to have that 4 or 6 handed surgery and trust each other. It's trusting those external third party
Yeah,
partners. And that's why having trusted industry partners is so critically important for us at G&A Consult, as it is for you at HR for Health, and why you've built what you have. And being able to reach out with a 24-hour hotline and just be able to say, something just doesn't smell right
mm,
now. For
yeah,
someone like this particular client of ours to be able to reach out, or even for us on behalf of the client to say, I'm just not feeling warm and fuzzy about this. And let me just share what's going on. And being able to handle that from the first level of call, or being able to be elevated to, somebody in your organization who specializes in these things. That's like that comfort blanket. And that's why with our accelerator and elite clients, we offer that as a service that's included with our services, because it's so critically important to give them that feeling of, hey, I've got a trusted partner that they've already vetted, right? G&A Consult already vetted them for me. It's a part and it's included with. That's what's critically important, to be able to both and, right? They're
a hun-
so focused and have so many responsibilities with their teams as they're building and growing, right? They're focusing on clinical excellence. They're focusing on building and growing their team, on mentoring their team, on other obligations, right? Personal obligations, family obligations, making sure the business, all of the things, right? And in full arch, patients are changing. The patient dynamic is changing constantly. So
mhm.
if they can have one of these areas where at least they feel like they've got it secure, where if they need expertise, they have that in their corner, it's one less thing they need to worry about. And they know that they've got that lifeline to reach out to. That's really what it's about, to have that trust and trusted partner that they have. So that's really kind of that lesson, if you will, that you asked, to go back to your original question, right?
Yeah,
That fallout piece is now that they know they have somebody they can reach out to, and they have somebody that they can trust, because trust can be broken, right? But isn't it better to build that trust early on, so when you need it, you've got it, rather than once it's broken, now you have to try to build that back up with someone. And that's
yeah.
really something that I think he values now more than before.
Yeah, good, good, yeah, good. And it's a hard lesson that he learned, but an important one. Well, as we end, everyone, on this first part, if anybody's interested in learning more about HR for Health and the tools there that can help ensure that not only that your HR documentation is correct, but that you've got the right systems in place so that none of this ever occurs, or at least is limited in its possibility of occurring, then go ahead and scan this QR code, and one of our team members will follow up with you. We can even do an assessment of your current, documents, whether you have an employment manual and other new hire documents, making sure you have everything you need. If you don't, then we'll help you make sure of that. And Greg, tell us a little bit about your services. I know you've done a great job, kind of describing the different components, but maybe you can summarize kind of what you do, and when it's an ideal time for the client to come on board and reach out to you. And you've got a QR code too. So
Yeah, certainly. I appreciate that, Ali. So, really, anybody who's doing full arch, either adding it into their practice, if they're already doing full arch dentistry and they're really looking for help on the coaching and training side of every touch point of that patient journey, from converting the leads to marketing, branding, messaging, or converting more cases, right? So, being able to convert those big 20, 30, $50,000 cases. And the other side of the business is the operational side, right? Understanding their P&Ls, how profitable is it to be doing these cases, not just the big exciting, oh, $50,000 on the top line. No, how much profitability is that, and how does it affect the rest of the business? Or a case study sharing with you today of how we help do team development and team structure and helping to find the right teammates along the way, for sure. And just scan the QR code, having a complimentary discovery call with us of where you are and what your need based is, and we can talk about what services we offer for that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, I know all of our clients have been super, super happy with your services and the results that they've gotten. It's not always the case in dental that occurs. So thank you for all that you do there.
Thanks.
All
Yeah,
right,
it's a great
everyone.
partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, everyone. We are done with this part one. Look for part two that's going to drop in the near future. And we've got an exciting topic having to do with employment manuals and a story that Greg will share with us about that. He kind of teased it a little bit earlier, but we're going to go into more detail in a little bit. So look forward to seeing you guys soon.